You will be judged for the actions of your father.
If you act like a thief, Thomas, I will treat you like one.
Construct a subdivision, 30 miles in the most pristine wilderness in North America.
Did you know the sharpest weapon in Yellowstone isn't a gun, it's a land deed? Outsiders see profit, revenge, and leverage. John Dutton sees one thing, a name that must outlast him. That's why love turns into leverage, law into a tool, and the ground into the prize. Let's chart the show's evolution across its 5-season landscape. Every betrayal, every brand, every battle, wrapped up in 21 minutes. Season 1 starts in Montana. In a valley ringed by mountains, John Dutton rides fence at dawn and signs papers by dusk. He runs the Yellowstone Dutton Ranch the way his father did, quiet, stubborn, unbending. Doctors have their verdict and call it terminal. John listens, then files the words away. He has his own legacy. He means to leave the land to his eldest, Lee, the son who never looks for an easier way. Now pressure gathers on the borders. To the west, the Broken Rock Reservation, where Chief Thomas Rainwater studies survey maps and old treaties and says the ground was stolen and must be reclaimed. To the south, Dan Jenkins arrives with renderings and investors, promising an airport, a resort, and a future measured in profit. They call it progress. John calls it theft with paperwork. Kayce Dutton, John's youngest, has already walked away from the brand. He married Monica from Broken Rock and lives on the reservation with their son Tate. He is the bridge between two histories and the crack where both sides try to widen the break. A dispute over grazing turns into rifles and panic. Shots ring out on a ridge. Lee falls. Monica's brother Robert pulls the trigger. Kayce answers in the same instant and kills him. By nightfall, John moves the pieces, buries the truth, and ties himself to Kayce with a secret neither will say aloud. The marriage shakes. Home stops feeling like a place and starts feeling like a choice. Kayce chooses the ranch. He comes back to ride for the brand because protecting a future for his boy is the only thing that makes sense. That same week, a storm in heels steps out of a truck. Beth Dutton, sharp as barbed wire and twice as unforgiving, returns to the big house with a briefcase and a temper. She drinks, she lights a cigarette, and she dares bankers to confuse acreage with numbers on a screen. In the bunkhouse, Shadows waits Rip Wheeler, the stray John took in as a teenager, and hammered into a man you can aim like a tool. Beth and Rip find each other as if no time passed. Their love is all edges in public and all vows in private. It's the one promise neither of them doubts. Across the kitchen table sits Jamie, the family lawyer who wants to wear the word good like a badge. John doesn't trust him. Beth doesn't forgive him. There's a wound between them from years back. A choice Jamie made for Beth that she never got to unmake. For now, they keep it buried beneath smiles and lawsuits, knowing it will surface when the worst moment needs company. Meanwhile, politics turn into skirmishes. Rainwater files claims, Jenkins hosts dinners, John answers with riders at night and meetings at dawn. A kid named Jimmy shows up at the gate with a record and no options. The ranch gives him its cure: work before sunrise, pain that teaches, and a brand that says you belong and don't run. In dust and sweat, he finds purpose, and in the laughter after supper, he finds a family. Then alliances harden. Rainwater and Jenkins decide leverage is stronger together and set their casino at the fence line, close enough to pull the valley's money like a river. Kayce, trying to keep danger off Monica's porch, returns alone and throws himself into John's fights and Rip's crew. One night, under cottonwood limbs, the Duttons take Jenkins, drop a rope over a branch, and leave him gasping at the edge of death. He survives barely and learns what it costs to mistake stubbornness for weakness. If you're ready for the next season, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe. Season 2 starts days later. Days after the dust settles, a new truth yanks the wheel. John's not dying of cancer, it's a ruptured ulcer that almost fooled him and everyone else. Death steps back, and John leans in harder. He pulls Kayce close and hands him the foreman job, a move that feels like a promotion and a test. Rip swallows it without a word, because the brand comes first and pride comes second. Monica tries the ranch again for Tate's sake, but healing comes in awkward half steps. Physical therapy turns into campus life. Campus life turns into distance. Distance turns into a short, fragile separation that neither of them really wants. They keep talking because silence would mean giving up. Jamie decides that being useful isn't enough. He wants to be seen. He runs toward the Attorney General's office and trips over his own need for approval. A reporter starts asking careful questions. He answers like a man who thinks control is the same thing as honesty. The article aims straight at his father and the ranch. Donors evaporate. Phones stop getting picked up. John shuts the door on his son's judgment and keeps the porch light on for his return, because that's what he does. Panic squeezes the worst decision out of Jamie. He pulls the reporter into a quiet place and turns a conversation into a crime. When the weight of it hits him, it nearly takes him with it. He crawls back home with a hat and a confession and finds forgiveness that looks like shelter but doesn't sound like trust. Across the valley, Power puts on a different shirt. Dan Jenkins thought he understood where the lines were. The Beck brothers show him he never did. Malcolm and Teal wear smiles and cologne and bring rot with them. They buy favors from the sort of men who don't use business cards. They twist county boards and lean on lawmen who've forgotten why they took the badge. They don't just squeeze profits, they squeeze people. Jenkins gets the message the hard way. The rope the Duttons used to warn him now becomes the leash the Becks used to finish him. He dies believing money should have been enough to keep him safe, and learning too late that it wasn't. The Becks don't come at John head on. They chip at what he loves until he's forced to turn and face them. They send bruisers to Beth's office, a late-day ambush with plastic on the floor and violence rehearsed. She refuses to break the way they expect. Rip arrives like a slammed door and changes the ending, but not the damage. Beth carries scars she doesn't hide, and a rage she won't cool. Rip carries the quiet that follows a fight you didn't start but had to finish. Together, they make a new promise without saying it out loud. No one gets to touch this family without paying. Kayce tries to hold two futures in one set of hands and feels both slipping. On the ranch, he runs crews, puts out fires, and learns the cruel math of leadership. Some days end with a head count that doesn't come up right. Off the ranch, he drives to a small apartment with Tate's drawings on the fridge and a silence that keeps reminding him he wasn't built to live halfway. He and Monica circle the same hurt and keep choosing the person in front of them anyway, because that's what love looks like when it's trying to survive pressure from every direction. The Becks want leverage, not victory speeches. They find the softest target and steal him. Tate vanishes, and the valley goes cold. John stops entertaining politics. Kayce stops sleeping. Rip gathers the bunkhouse and says the one thing that always moves men like his: we're going now. What follows isn't a plan so much as a decision. Trucks roll. Doors get kicked in. Questions are asked with boots and wire cutters, and the names of men who will not be allowed to leave with their secrets. The Becks discover that fear works until it meets a family with nothing left to lose. By the time the son thinks about coming up, Tate is back in his mother's arms, and the brothers who started this are past the point where apologies matter. When it's over, John does the only ceremonial thing he believes in. He writes Rip into his will, a line of ink that finally matches the weight of years. No speeches, no toast, just a fact. You are mine, and I am yours. Around them, the ranch exhales, not because it's safe, this place is never safe, but because for one night, the people in its orbit chose each other and won. Season 3, new hands arrive. Old grudges wake. Rip hires a new hand and lets the bunkhouse decide the rest. Teeter shows up with a drawl, a stare that dares you to blink, and a need to earn her place with rope and grit. Colby bumps against her edges, then learns they're the parts he'd miss if she ever left. An old rival of John's, Wade Morrow, and his boy Clint try to make their point by running Teeter and Colby down in a river, holding them under until the world turns purple. Rip doesn't let other men set the rules. He finds father and son, drags them into the dirt, and settles the account the old way. Courts will call it a crime. The brand will call it balance. Then the valley goes quiet in that way it does, right before it breaks. Kayce is hit inside his own office. A box on Beth's desk turns into fire and tears the room apart. John stops for a stranded car on the shoulder and takes bullets for kindness. From a distance, the ranch looks calm. Up close, it's sirens, smoke, and blood on gravel. Season 4. They live. Barely. And nothing stays the same. They survive, but only just. John comes back with fewer words and a harder will. Beth steps out of the wreckage and never cools. Kayce counts who's still standing and starts again. Rip deals with Rourke the way you deal with a rattler in the grass. No speeches, one clean move, and it's over. Market Equities swaps out faces and keeps the plan. Caroline Warner takes the helm and studies Beth like a problem set, not a person, as if numbers will help her understand a woman who lights matches on purpose. In a hallway that smells like antiseptic and coffee, Beth meets a kid named Carter, whose father runs out of time and leaves him with nothing. She sees herself in the way he expects the world to hit first so he can hit back. She takes him home. Rip looks at the boy the way John once looked at him and tries to be the man he needed. It's loud, it's rough, and the kindness comes disguised as chores and curfews. John crosses paths with Summer Higgins, an activist who believes saving the land means saving it from people like him. They argue until they find the overlap: love of open ground, hatred of waste. Beth pushes Summer's crowd toward a protest that turns hotter than planned, and Summer ends up in front of a judge. John spends what influence he has left to keep the hammer from falling all the way. He's furious with Beth for lighting the fuse, and grateful she's still the one who never asks if this fight is worth it. Jimmy can't quit the arena, so John points him south to the 4-6's ranch in Texas. Go learn the trade the hard way, or find out it's not yours and be done. Down there, Jimmy meets Emily, and the pieces line up. It's not fireworks, it's relief, like he finally fits the life he's been trying on. When he brings her back to Yellowstone and asks for a clean break toward the future he wants, John nods, wipes the slate of old debts, and lets him go. Not every farewell here is a sentence. Sometimes it's a map. The question of who pulled the strings on the Dutton hit keeps circling the table. Rainwater points to Terrell Riggins, a convict who treats conspiracy like a resume. Riggins' file leads to Garrett Randall, a former cellmate and the man who fathered Jamie and killed Jamie's mother. Jamie has been practicing the word dad like it could fix everything if he says it enough. Beth walks him to the truth and shoves. The gun isn't for show, it's a mirror. Jamie chooses survival and puts Garrett in the ground. Beth takes pictures, body, blood, cleanup, and brings them home like handcuffs you can't see. From then on, Jamie moves when she says move. In Season 5, the governor's chair becomes a battleground. John wins the governor's office by promising to stand still against progress that comes in bulldozers. He doesn't pretend to want the job. He takes it because signatures beat saddles when the fight is zoning and permits. He puts his hand on a Bible, puts Beth in the chief's chair, kills the airport, and plants himself against a pipeline under broken rock. Linnell Perry reminds him that big money doesn't quit, it changes lanes. Caroline Warner leans in, not back. Market Equities sends Sarah Atwood to find a weak seam. She finds Jamie. Monica is pregnant and Hope has a tremor in it. On the night the baby comes, she tries to reach Kayce and meets grief on the highway. They name the child John for an hour and then bury the hour. Words can't stitch that kind of tear, so the two of them do it with silence and hands held. At Moe's urging, Kayce goes to the hilltop and fasts with the wind, chasing a vision that shows only hard choices and no shortcuts. He worries the path splits between his house and his duty. He walks back anyway. There's only forward here. Wolves take calves. The men do what men on a ranch do. Then come the collars, the jurisdiction, the headlines. Summer Higgins ends up under John's watch. Part punishment, part lesson, part mirror. Beth hates her on sight. Rip closes the door and makes them talk like adults until what's left is grudging respect instead of fire. Then the herd gets sick, the kind of sickness that travels faster than trucks and doesn't care what brand is burned into the hide. The cure is miles. Rip pushes south with a crew to Texas pasture. Teeter swings into the saddle and kisses Colby like she can win a fight with goodbye by refusing to say it. John leaves Kayce in charge of the home front and learns that some battles aren't fought at gates. They're argued in rooms with flags, where a rancher has to trade spurs for statutes and still come out holding the line. Sarah Atwood doesn't knock, she circles. Jamie already has the office he chased his whole life and the hollow he never filled. She offers him a clean path dressed like strategy, get John out, Reset the board for market equities. Let Jamie be the man with the pen. He bites. He pushes impeachment. Beth answers with the quiet threat of photographs she keeps like loaded safes. Jamie fires back with a truth they all know too well. Every secret in this family has a map, and every map ends at the train station. Beth whispers the darkest option to John. Jamie hires strangers to make sure that darkness falls somewhere else. John Dutton dies the kind of death his enemies hope for, staged to look self-inflicted. His children don't need forensics to see the lie. Beth mourns with her fists. Kayce sets his jaw and waits for a sign. Rip hears in Texas, turns north, and rides till the horizon quits moving. The ranch holds still, not peaceful, just waiting for something to hit back. Detective Dillard starts tugging threads and finds the same hands on all of them. Sarah, market equities, deals that balloon the moment the Duttons are erased. Sarah never testifies. Someone makes sure of it. Jamie's cut from the airport lease shines like a flare in the dark. Kayce tracks down Grant Horton, the man who did the shooting, and makes a choice that feels heavier than revenge. He lets him live, with a warning that amounts to a life sentence imposed by fear and distance. Over on Broken Rock, Thomas Rainwater fights a war with speeches on one side and sabotage on the other. Angela Blue Thunder sells the dream of a pipeline, and plenty want to believe the checks will finally cash. Mo answers with fire. He and his people burn the supplies and buy time the only way they can, illegally, loudly, and clear enough for anyone watching to understand. Not here. Back at Yellowstone, the worst pain arrives without a villain to blame. Carter gets trapped in a barn by a panicked horse. Colby dives in and doesn't come back up. Hooves do not care about arcs or justice. Teeter says almost nothing and somehow says everything. The work continues because it has to. On this land, moving forward is the only prayer that sounds like action. The bills come first, the kind that make your back ache just to read them. Taxes climb. Letters from lawyers pile up like storm clouds. Market equities leans on the state to take what the Duttons won't sell. Beth and Kayce sharpen pencils, run the numbers, and hate every column they add up. Sell the gear, sell the horses, sell anything that buys one more season. It keeps the lights on, not the wolves out. Kayce sees a door no one wants to open, but everyone knows is there. He takes Beth to Rainwater. The offer is plain and heavy enough to bow the table. Broken Rock buys Yellowstone. The farmhouse comes down. The fences stop being lines around a family and become a promise to a people. Kayce keeps his own patch inside that promise so he can raise Tate with Monica where the sky still feels familiar. The bunkhouse empties by degrees. Hands drift toward roads that end in new brands and different sunrises. Teeter rides south with Travis, chasing long miles instead of old memories. Rip turns back, plants himself beside Beth because that's the shape of his life, then rides forward with her toward ground they can call theirs without argument. Rainwater and Mo do what they said they would. The stories in the soil stay put, and the asphalt dreams die at the fence line. There's one last debt. Beth walks into Jamie's world and tells him the thing he can't undo. The land he wanted to own now belongs to a future he can't buy. He reaches for the only weapon he trusts, his voice, and finds out it was never sharp enough to stop her. Words become shoves. Shoves become the end. Beth leaves with the silence she came for. Rip takes what's left to the train station, where problems go nameless and never come back. John Dutton is laid into the ground, and the valley lowers its voice. Not safe, not healed, just quieter. Friends, enemies, and everyone in between listen to a life summed up in a few clean truths. He would not sell, and he paid the price men pay when they keep their word. The version of the ranch he built is over. The mark it left in the dirt isn't. Down in Texas, Jimmy and Emily turn work into a home that doesn't need a brand to feel real. The lesson he carries north to south is simple. The ranch gave him a backbone, not a sentence. Kayce and Monica set their house where love isn't a coin flip. Tate grows into a boy stitched from two histories that finally stop pulling him apart. Beth and Rip buy their own place and carve out days that make sense, with Carter learning that a home is the pair of eyes that find you first when trouble starts. Rainwater keeps watch over land that holds bones and names, knowing victory here is a vow, not a parade. Strip away the headlines and the gun smoke, and what's left is a family refusing to let time make choices for them. John believed dirt outlives men and built his life around proving it. Beth believed love and war share a backbone and never put either down. Kayce believed being decent is a job you clock into every morning. Jamie believed new names make new men and discovered they don't. Rip believed work is love you can see, and he showed it by standing where he said he would. The whole story fits between two pictures of progress. One draws airports, resorts, and tax bases. The other shows a boy and his grandfather riding at dawn, arguing about weather like it's scripture. You pick which future matters more, and the show never pretends it chose both. It plants its flag and dares you to move it. That's the thing. Land, blood, promises, and a bill that keeps coming. If you're still here, you know the rule. Don't pick the easy choice. Pick the one you can live with. Cameras don't pull anyone from the fire. People do. And when the world tries to price out a place like this, the last defense is a family that doesn't leave.